Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because, well, we're looking at something that honestly feels straight out of a science fiction movie, but as you'll see, it is rapidly becoming our everyday reality. Today, we're diving deep into the humanoid robotics revolution. We're going to unpack the incredibly fast rise of a company called Figure AI. We'll explore the massive economic forces driving this whole industry shift, and we really need to look at why these machines are poised to completely transform the global workforce and what that actually means for human workers. All right, let's jump right in.
Picture this scene for a second. It's March 25th, 2026. First Lady Melania Trump is holding a press conference, and walking right alongside her through the corridors of the White House is a robot. Specifically, Figure 3. It's a humanoid robot standing just over 1.7 meters tall. Now, when this happened, it went totally viral on social media. People thought it was just a quirky PR stunt, but what's genuinely fascinating is what was sitting behind that viral moment. It wasn't just a gimmick. It was the very public unveiling of a near-future reality that has been quietly, yet aggressively, building behind the scenes.
And to understand just how serious that reality is, you only need to look at the money. $39 billion. That is the staggering valuation that Figure AI, the company behind that robot, reached by late 2025. We're not talking about some niche startup playing with toys in a garage anymore. This is a massive, heavily capitalized enterprise with an incredibly ambitious and, frankly, to some, slightly unsettling goal. They want to build machines capable of physically replacing human labor across practically every industry.
L'alba dei robot umanoidi.
Building the ultimate machine.
So, how exactly does an unknown startup get to a $39 billion valuation that fast? Well, we've got to look at the architect, Brett Adcock. He didn't start out in Silicon Valley. He actually grew up on a farm in Illinois. But the guy had an absolute knack for business and tech. His first major win was actually in software. He founded an AI recruiting platform called Vettery, which he eventually sold off for $110 million. But he didn't stop there. Next, he pivots entirely to hardware, founding Archer Aviation to build electric flying taxis. He raises over $1 billion and takes that company public at a $2.7 billion valuation. Then, by 2022, he has this massive realization. AI was getting incredibly smart, almost like a real brain, but it lacked a physical body. So he took his software expertise, combined it with his hardware experience, and dropped $100 million of his own cash to found Figure AI in May 2022.
L'ascesa di Figure AI, una timeline di rapida evoluzione.
What happened next is a literal masterclass in hyper-accelerated tech development. It's almost unbelievable. Founded in May 2022, right? To move fast, Adcock aggressively poached top engineering talent from industry heavyweights. We're talking Boston Dynamics, Tesla, Google DeepMind. By October 2023, just over a year later, they already have a walking, moving Figure 1 robot. Then by August 2024, their Figure 2 model is actively working shifts on a BMW factory floor. Fast forward to early 2025, they drop the Figure 3 model powered by their own custom AI, and boom, that leads straight to that massive $39 billion valuation in September 2025. I mean, going from a mere concept to a factory-working machine in under 3 years, that is practically unheard of in heavy hardware.
But you might be wondering, what was the actual technological leap that made this even possible? It all comes down to a breakthrough demo in March 2024. In it, a human asks the Figure robot for something to eat. Now, older robots would need to be pre-programmed with exact spatial coordinates to pick something up, but Figure 1 just looks at a table, uses AI to identify that an apple is the only edible item there, picks it up, hands it to the human, and literally speaks out loud to explain its reasoning. This was an absolute game changer. It proved that thanks to generative AI, robots finally have a brain capable of interpreting novel situations and making independent decisions in the physical world. They aren't just executing rigid code anymore, they actually understand their environment. Their strategy to get there was brilliant in its sequencing. First, Figure AI nailed the physical hardware, the body. Second, instead of trying to build a brain from scratch right away, they smartly partnered with OpenAI to handle all the complex reasoning, vision, and language models. That gave them a huge head start, but then they pivoted. To achieve full vertical integration and really have ultimate control over their product, they ended the OpenAI partnership and developed their own superior in-house AI, which they called Helix AI, to power the advanced Figure 3 model. And the crazy part? We know this technology actually works outside of a controlled lab. Just look at the stats from their partnership with BMW at the Spartanburg plant. The Figure 2 robot spent 11 months on an active, real-world production line. It put in over 1,250 hours of work, moved 90,000 parts, and directly contributed to manufacturing 30,000 BMW X3s. But here is the most impressive metric of all, an accuracy rate of over 99%. They proved undeniably that these humanoid robots are entirely capable of highly accurate, sustained, heavy factory labor.
La competizione globale, the race for the ultimate workforce.
Of course, Figure AI isn't doing this in a vacuum. The second the tech industry realized generative AI had solved the robotics brain problem, it kicked off a massively funded global arms race. And look at the heavyweights involved here. You have Figure AI leading the pack with active factory shifts, but then you have Tesla with their Optimus robot. Now, Elon Musk has made massive promises, claiming Optimus could one day be worth more than the rest of Tesla combined. But as of early 2026, their mass production was still facing delays. You also have legacy players like Boston Dynamics. They recently retired those hydraulic robots known for the viral parkour videos, shifting entirely to a new electric Atlas robot designed for factory work with Hyundai. And don't forget Apptronic's Apollo robot, partnering with Mercedes-Benz and Google DeepMind. Literally every major tech and auto giant is rushing into this space.
But this race has also revealed a pretty stark geopolitical divide. The Western strategy, pushed by companies like Figure and Tesla, is laser-focused on building highly intelligent, sophisticated, and yes, very expensive AI-driven robots for complex tasks. Contrast that with the Chinese strategy. Over there, companies like Unitree are heavily state-subsidized, and they're focusing on flooding the market with the most economical, mass-produced hardware possible. I mean, Unitree was already selling a functional humanoid robot for just $4,900. It's a classic technological battle. Building the smartest mind versus building the most scalable, affordable body.
Perché I robot sostituiranno l'uomo, solving the labor crisis.
So we have to ask the multi-trillion-dollar question. Why are all these massive corporations pouring billions into replacing humans with machines? Well, the primary economic rationale driving this is simple. Western countries are facing massive labor shortages across logistics, warehousing, and manufacturing. You combine that with an aging population, and our workforce is quite literally shrinking. On top of that, fewer and fewer humans are willing to do the heavy, dangerous, and mind-numbingly repetitive tasks that keep global supply chains running. From the industry's perspective, robots are the absolute perfect solution. Think about it. They don't get tired, they don't file workers' comp claims for bad backs, and once mass-produced, they provide incredibly cheap labor.
L'impatto economico sui lavoratori. The automation threat.
But here's the catch, and this is exactly why robots threaten workers. You cannot introduce a tireless, cheap, infinitely scalable robotic workforce without fundamentally disrupting the human one. Take a second and let this number sink in. 50%. According to a major study out of Oxford University, nearly half of all jobs are theoretically automatable. We are not just talking about a threat to a few niche roles here. This impacts manual and repetitive professions the most, the very backbone of factory, warehouse, and logistics labor. We are staring down a potential technological shift that could displace millions of workers at a speed we have never historically experienced. So that leaves us standing at a very stark crossroads, with two incredibly different views of the future. The optimistic view, which is often championed by founders like Brett Adcock, argues that robots are simply filling vacant jobs that nobody wants to do anymore. They say that in an aging world, these machines will literally save global productivity and economic growth. But then you have the critical view. This perspective points out a very real, very pressing danger. Rapid automation threatens millions of manual jobs, potentially wiping out entire professions and dramatically widening the gap of economic inequality between the people who own the robots and the people whose labor was just replaced by them. We are talking about a profound structural change to society.
Who will win and who will lose? Because look, the technology is already here. The multi-billion-dollar valuations are real. And the robots are literally already walking our factory floors. But the reality is, the outcome of this revolution doesn't actually depend on the artificial intelligence. And it doesn't depend on the hardware. It depends entirely on the economic and social choices that we humans make right now as this whole thing unfolds. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly encourage you to keep your eyes closely on this space because I promise you the future of work is changing faster than ever before.